Next, let's take you to a memorial garden to honour the thousands of Londoners who've died during the pandemic, which was opened today in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. The Mayor says it's a lasting memorial to recognise the impact COVID has had and continues to have on our city. Victoria is there for us this evening and can tell us more. Hi, Vic.
Riz, well, the blossom has well and truly gone, hasn't it? But it was named the park because it's when the pandemic hit London in spring last year. It was blossom season. Now, since then, of course, more than 19,000 people have died in London because of coronavirus. Now, there are 33 trees here representing each borough in London and the City of London. And this garden is to pay tribute not just to the people who've died, but to all those key workers who've worked so tirelessly over the last 15 months or so. You came and saved me from the premise of more. In weather only gardeners really appreciate, the London Blossom Garden was formally opened. Set in the Olympic Park, the opening ceremony brought together all those involved in the planning and design of the park and some of the key workers it hopes to honour.
I've seen people have such a terrible traumatic times, terrible, but the garden and the nature space has helped them come through. A green space is a reflection of change.
The London Blossom Garden features 33 trees to represent each London borough. A lasting living memorial to the impact of COVID on the capital, the 19,000 Londoners who've died and those who've worked so hard in the toughest of years.
It was very challenging, still very challenging, and I would recommend it to our clients, to myself and to loved ones to come and relax here anytime, any day.
The pandemic began during last year's blossom season. This year's may have disappeared, but it's reflected in the park's design. Even the concrete in the paths and benches of reclaimed timber.
It actually looks like blossom petals have fallen onto the concrete and bring this element the whole year round for people to sort of experience and not just during the blossom season.
Davies White, the landscape architects, they likened it to cupping hands. The shape of the site is very much like this, and you can come here and because of the surrounding trees around the site you can actually really escape London.
The Mayor sounded an optimistic tone at today's opening, but he wants this garden to be a place for reflection, the first of several blossom gardens in partnership with the National Trust.
What we want this to be is a place for tranquility, for space, to meet people and just to be part of nature. That's what we want it to be, and I think when these trees really start to get going, it's going to be a stunning place.
A perfect place to watch the seasons change as happier times hopefully come. Well, Safia and Barbara know only too well the impact of COVID-19. They lost their father and husband, Zahari, earlier this year. There are so many people that have been through so much trauma and so much difficulty in the last year. Do you feel like London is looking ahead rather than looking backwards to those losses? And what do you want to remember about your father, your husband?
Yeah, I mean, I think London is looking ahead as they should, and you know everyone wants to kind of move on as much as we possibly can from this really traumatic and difficult year. No one wants that more than we do, but I think it's also important that we take a bit of pause to think about what's happened and the consequences of meeting up again with the little knowledge that we have about COVID still.
Tell us about your dad. Your husband.
It's significant that 33 trees, and I was actually with him for 33 years in total, and that's half of my life, and it was the better half. He was witty, kind, very intelligent, extremely focused in things he wanted to do,
and had a huge heart, and he really cared about helping other people, and he dedicated nearly 40 years of his life to the NHS. He was actually Malaysian, and he came to the UK, worked as a clinical psychotherapist and psychologist, and he also helped refugees and torture victims in his spare time. So it's hard to distill someone into a couple of lines, but he was so giving.
And caring. Yeah, I mean, we're going to miss him forever. But he also set us up as a strong, united family. And that's how we're going to go forward.
So knowing what you are going through, being in a place like this, how important is it to have the space, the time for reflection?
Incredibly important, and it's beautiful that this has been set up, you know, having these spaces that we can come to remember not just Dad, obviously for us, but all of the people that have died, and, you know, the remembrance wall that the bereaved Families for Justice have put together as well is such a beautiful testament, and different institutions have marked the deaths in different ways. My brother went to an Arsenal game yesterday and they actually read out a name of all the supporters and fans that have died of COVID, and my dad's name was included, and it was a surprise for us, but it's really amazing to have those moments.
So what do you need going forwards then? What does London need, do you think?
Well, I think we need spaces like this where we know people can come and nobody will make a comment if they break down or if they sit here for a long time, but perhaps they could actually put a hand on their shoulder and offer them some help.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us this evening.